Right now, we are joined by one of our favorite guests. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, and there is much to talk to him about what his organization is doing and what's in the news today. But he also has a new book, and I want to focus on that. It's called A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom. Tom Fitton, congratulations on the new book.
I appreciate it. It's a big day. It's a great new book. I wish I could be writing it up into including today, but
right.
I had to stop. There's always something happening when it comes to, frankly and sadly, the attack on the Republic.
It is, and I just want to, you speak quite a bit in here about the establishment, about the deep state, about Hillary Clinton, the impeachment coup, and all of those things. I think it's important for people to understand that so much of what we know now about the deep state, about the FBI, about James Comey, about the Justice Department, about the cover-ups, and all of the things that we have learned, it really wouldn't have happened if we didn't know about the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and that comes all the way back to the point of origin with you, Tom, and Judicial Watch, and people forget that.
That's right. I mean, we were asking about Benghazi. We got these documents showing the White House, the Obama White House, was involved in the cover-up. It led to the creation of the Benghazi Select Committee, but we noticed there were no Clinton emails. So we pushed and pushed, and long story short is that they confessed they had the emails. And that led to the pay-to-play scandal being uncovered, where Hillary Clinton was using the State Department to cover up her email misconduct. And, our theory of the case has always been that the targeting of Trump was a distraction in order to protect Hillary from the consequences of her email misconduct. And we're learning that was literally the case.
And by extension, President Obama, because he was caught in a very big lie saying that he knew nothing about it, when, of course, we know that he was emailing her on that private server as well.
That's right. And, they didn't want a fully operational Justice Department, namely to protect Hillary. And now we also know that when President Trump had the temerity to ask the Ukrainians what the heck was going on with Biden-Burisma, you need to be investigating it, boy, their reaction was mildly strong. They wanted to overturn the Constitution to get Trump out of office for asking that question. Now we know that Ukraine was actually kind of even a side hustle for Hunter Biden, in terms of the corruption that looks like implicates his father.
And you make an important distinction in the first section of your book, Tom Fitton, and I think I want to spend a little time on it, because you do talk about the deep state, which is sort of this phrase we have used for the permanent political class in this town, unelected people who just sort of behave as though they run the show, and sadly in many cases they do run the show. You make a distinction between them and the left. This really isn't something that we can look through the regular left-right, conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat paradigm, is it?
No, I mean, you have the permanent bureaucracy here that thinks it knows better than those elected to public office. And, my guess is you talk to a Democrat president, they would be complaining about the bureaucracy, probably not in terms like deep state, but they talk about the agencies refusing to change and reform or allow reform to take place. And they push out reformers in the agencies, political appointees, and they kind of see themselves as the long-termers. And the people that are elected to office by the American people, they're the short-termers, and they'll just outlast them.
Yeah, and it's again, I'm stumbling because I want to be clear. The deep state is very much now aligned with the political left, and because the political left would in fact expand the power of the federal government, and that works into the favor of the deep state. So in a sense, that because of President Trump, there has been a line drawn here in terms of where you stand on the political equation with regard to whether you protect that permanent political class, or for that matter, if you're protecting them because you fear them, as we see from many establishment Republicans.
Well, let's be clear. Much of the agencies are run by Democrat partisans. I mean, they're career civil servants, but they're Democrats and they're partisan, and they see their job to advance their political and ideological agenda. Now, in theory, they're not supposed to be doing that, but it just happens all the time. You see it in the Justice Department, you see it in the FBI, you see it in the other agencies. But then you got the kleptocracy.
Yeah.
And, to me, that's the most interesting thing about the Trump administration. He came in as an outsider. And in many ways, the kleptocracy said, we don't want him. We don't want him messing around with this and getting the Justice Department operating the way that the American people expect it to be. So let's freeze it. let's freeze the Justice Department by making up allegations about Trump and Russia and decimating the Justice Department by taking out the ability of the Attorney General to do anything, and Sessions wrongly recused himself. And you had the Justice Department frozen and targeting Trump while allowing this corruption that should have been, that Trump was hired really to kind of undo, continue to go by unaccounted for.
Which, by the way, you talk about the kleptocracy. It brings us to your section on Hillary Clinton. And yes, Hillary Clinton still looms large here in much of what we're discussing. The book is called A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom by Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. And I want to focus a little bit on the Clinton Foundation pay-to-play scheme, because I'm seeing it mirrored in these Hunter Biden emails and the Hunter Biden story, a little less elegantly and a little less professionally, but it's a very similar situation. And let's begin here. When Hillary Clinton was being confirmed for Secretary of State, Senator Dick Lugar at the time, he made it very, he was pretty clear about this, and there were many senators who we just spoke with Senator sorry, I'm forgetting his name now. We just had him on the show yesterday. Senator DeMint, excuse me, who said he voted against Hillary Clinton specifically because there was not a line drawn between the Clinton Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, and what would soon be the Clinton State Department. And all of those concerns that were raised during that confirmation process, Tom Fitton, boy, did they come true in spades. This was a complete and total revolving cash door.
Yes, and she promised not only the Senate Republicans, but the Obama White House that she would maintain a bright line separation between the State Department and the foundation. And we uncovered through these emails from her server, namely Huma Abedin's emails, her top aide, that the Clinton Foundation immediately began using its access to Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin to get favors. So you had all the potentates who were funding the Clinton Foundation lining up to get favors and attention from the State Department. In one time, I forget the potentate who wanted the meeting, but he was unable to get a meeting with Hillary through the traditional diplomatic channel, so he went through the Clinton Foundation. And of course, the other dirty little secret is that the Clinton Foundation was also working on the dossier, namely through Sidney Blumenthal, who also worked subsequently with the Kerry State Department to launder the dossier into the FBI. What a tangled web that was.
Yeah. And Tom, listen, there's a lot in the book, and there's a lot we could talk about. I want to skip ahead to the end because I always want to. We don't just complain. Actually, Tom, I know you're busy because it's book day. Do you have a little bit more time?
Sure.
All right, because I do want to get into a couple of other things that you've got in the book. There's so much in here, and I know that on these book launch days, you've got a lot of different interviews scheduled. So hold there. We're just going to take a couple of minutes because we don't just complain and we don't just point out what's wrong, but we try to look at how we can fix this, how we can save the country. And Tom has some ideas about that. It's an important part of this book, and we're going to get into that in a moment. Keep it here on WMAL.
The stories that have been breaking while you've been at work. This is the Larry O'Connor Show.
Tom Fitton has been gracious enough to stick with us for one more segment here. His book is that important. It transcends the upcoming presidential election, but it's certainly very relevant to this election. The book is A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom. It's available today. Today's the big day. And by the way, it's very important to send a message to book publishers how these books are in need, are in desire, that you want books like this. So today's a good day to shoot it up the charts there. I recommend it highly. It's by the way, very well sourced. There's great references in here, great data that you can use for your own political discussions. And Tom Fitton, I do want to go to the last section of your book, How to Protect and Save Our Republic. Not a small topic. And this really stuck out to me when I read it. It said, those on the left and the far left and those who have contempt for the rule of law and the deep state truly do believe they have an ace in the hole when it comes to undoing the United States of America. The one thing they believe above all others is that those who oppose them will ultimately do nothing to stop them. Let's talk about that for a minute. Those who oppose them will do nothing to stop them because they don't have the wherewithal, because they don't have the same Alinsky-like focus and passionate grit, because we've got church to go to and families to raise, or is it because we're non-confrontational, because we we care about unity more than, I don't know. I mean, you help me. Why is it so often their opponents do nothing?
Well, I kind of derisively refer to it as the loser Republican. And we've had awful leadership in the Hill and, frankly, in the presidency before President Trump on these issues. President Trump's instincts on this has all been right, but he's been surrounded by those who engage in fear-based decision-making. So you have this extraordinary corruption, worst corruption scandal in American history. We appointed a special counsel, or, I guess not technically a special counsel, but the U.S. Attorney Durham was appointed to look at this beginning, April of last year. Now it's 12, but 17, 18 months later, and not one significant prosecution. The only person who's been prosecuted has been a lawyer who was served to them on a silver platter last December. And there's no indication anything substantial is going to be done. So it's the same old, same old. And as long as they are able to do what they're not even going before grand juries to testify. I mean, that would be enough, in my view, to keep them more honest and maybe prevent them from doing anything wrong in the future. And now we see Joe Biden. I'm not saying vote for or against Joe Biden. That's not my role as president of Judicial Watch. But when he's promising, and you see the news stories, to bring back the same gang responsible for the last corruption, you can see that there's going to be, it's just going to continue potentially. And frankly, unless the president orders the agencies to clean house more substantially, and he takes additional steps to clean house, it may even worsen under his administration unless he has a different attitude. He has more people with a different attitude. We need more Rick Grenells and less Pompeos in terms of approaching their job.
That was my follow-up to you. Well, I'm surprised to hear you say Pompeo. Let's get in. Oh, that's true. You guys have had some roadblocks at the State Department. I want to get into that in our next interview, but I was thinking more in the Justice Department. Here's a president who recognizes the problem, but he puts Christopher Wray in charge of the FBI. He puts Rod Rosenstein in charge, or second in charge at the Justice Department. This truly does require a broad-based cleaning of house as much as that's possible, does it not, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, the presidents don't normally set up the number twos in the agencies. That's just Sessions who put Rod Rosenstein in. Wray, that's typically a DOJ decision-making in terms of personnel. And, what is the president supposed to be doing? Firing everybody every 3 months? Maybe.
Looks that way.
But Wray ain't doing it right now. And it's pretty clear his days are numbered in terms of his position if the president wins. But I don't know if the FBI it can be rescued in terms of the way it's been run over the last decade. It's really awful.
Well, that said, Tom Fitton also goes in this part to talk about how you can be activated, how we can't just sit around and complain about it, listen to talk radio, use our social media, and just wait for change to happen. We have to really get engaged. We have to take a page out of their book. They are community organizers. They organize their communities, and without us organizing our communities around our ideas, that vacuum gets bigger and bigger, and the left will fill it. And, Tom, that'll be your next book, I'm sure, and I'm looking forward to it. But thank you for writing this one.
You're welcome, Larry. Thanks for the coverage.
Again, it's A Republic Under Assault, the left's ongoing attack on American freedom, and it's very relevant today. You got to get it. Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch.